Welcome back to another revision video for Paper 1. By now we have already learned everything we need to know about the Lego movie and the video game, and we've also looked at how to tackle the first 1 and 4 marker questions in this section. Now we are going to move on to tackling the first 10 marker, which will require more detail from you in your answer. Question 8 of Paper 1 is similar to Question 7 in that it will test your knowledge and understanding of the film and video game industry or audiences. The key difference is that you are required to write a much more detailed essay-style response, which should take about 10 minutes to complete, and this is how much space you are given to write out your response in the exam. A good rule of thumb for any 10-marker exam question in media studies is to aim for a minimum of 2 paragraphs, but aspire for 3. This is particularly important for those students aiming for a grade 8 or 9, because it is very difficult to achieve top marks in just 2 paragraphs. Not impossible, just more difficult. So here are some examples of questions that you could be asked in question 8. Explain at least 2 uses and gratifications of video games using Bloomer and Katz's theory. Refer to the Lego movie video game to support your answer. Explain how and why independent and mainstream films are different. Explain the advantages of mainstream filmmaking. Explain how the Lego movie appeals to a family audience. Explain how the Lego video game targets the audience. Explain the impact of technology on the film industry. And finally, explain how and why CGI has had a positive effect on filmmaking. So those are just some examples. There's not really any set structure, but that gives you an idea of the kinds of questions that you might be asked in this question. So let's take a look at one of those questions in a bit more detail and consider what we could say. So explain the advantages of mainstream filmmaking. Let's have a look at some of those points that you could make. So the first one is that there are wider releases on a global scale, so large conglomerates have the money and the relationships with other companies such as cinemas to be able to release the film on a worldwide scale. Another point would be the fact that they have bigger budgets, so this means they can invest in better production values such as CGI, animation, better locations, and also to invest in the cast. Which leads us on to another point you could make about attracting well-known celebrities and directors, which will attract fans of these people, which will bring in, of course, wider audiences. You could also discuss synergy and how they cross-promote products. So mainstream companies have the budgets to invest in large marketing campaigns and to cross-promote the film with merchandise through synergy, which means they are much more likely to saturate the market and get more people to see them. I think the idea is that mainstream companies have the ability to be able to franchise. In the description, I have linked to a full exemplar response to this question that received 10 marks. I would recommend that you print off a copy and read through this, highlighting the point, evidence, and explain structure as you go. So pause the video here and have a go at that. Right, let's have a look at how that answer was structured, focusing on paragraph 1. As part of the point, the first thing they needed to do was write a sentence to suggest one of the advantages. So in this case, they have said, one of the advantages of mainstream filmmaking are bigger budgets because they are part of the Big Six. Then they needed to give evidence from the set product to support the point, which they have done by saying, for example, the Lego movie had a budget of $60 million because it was produced by Warner Brothers. This meant that it was able to produce a movie with high production values such as high quality CGI animation, which included lots of special effects. Then they needed to link this all together by explaining how the evidence they have highlighted was an advantage. This is an advantage to the company as it means that they are likely to attract mass audiences to the cinema on opening weekend, as audiences will be keen to see the high-tech visuals on a large screen, which in turn means that the company will make a profit from the film. Paragraph 2 and 3 has been structured in exactly the same way, taking a different point from the list we wrote earlier. So pause the video to have a read through that and compare this with what you have highlighted. Okay, so let's take a look at another question, and I think this time we'll focus on the Lego video game. Explain how the Lego video game targets the audience. So some points that I could discuss are the idea of intertextuality, and that audiences who like the movie would be targeted by the use of intertextual references in the game, so such as character names, voices, and narrative themes. The idea that there was a cross-promotion release, so it has been released on a wide range of platforms as Warner Brothers made use of convergence, which targets a mass audience who can access the game on a platform that is convenient to them. The other idea could be regulation, and the fact that the game includes mild violence set in a fantasy world, meaning that it was given a 7 PEGI rating. This means they are able to attract a family audience with young players. And you could also discuss possibly the idea of interactivity and the fact that the multiplayer mode enables families to play together and experience the game in an active way. And then in terms of structure, I would write a sentence to suggest one way that it targets the audience. So, one of the ways that a LEGO video game targets the audience is through the cross-platform release. Then I would give evidence from the set product. So when it was released in 2014 alongside the movie, the company used convergence to ensure it was available on a wide variety of gaming platforms, including consoles like the PlayStation and Xbox, PCs and smartphones such as iOS and Android. And finally, I would explain how that evidence helps to target the audience. So this targeted the audience because it meant that they could play the game on platforms that they already own, so it was convenient for them, i.e. that they didn't have to buy expensive new consoles, which means that they were more likely to buy the game. And now let's look at one final question, but this time you are going to structure your own answer. So explain the appeals of the LEGO movie for a family audience. As this is an appeal question, we should focus our points around the uses and gratifications theory. So the points I could make include personal identity, in that young audience members will be able to identify with Emmett and his struggles tackling saving the world, and that parents will be able to identify with the father-son relationship portrayed. I could also discuss social interaction, so that audience members can communicate with each other via the social media and via websites. The website appeals to younger audiences because there are games where they can interact with other fans. I could also discuss entertainment, so the elements of action and comedy appeal to all ages, there are some more adult jokes, and there's intertextuality to appeal to parents. And finally, I could discuss knowledge, so the movie gives young audiences an idea of what you could do with the LEGO and also helps them to understand the world around them. So using those points, I would now like you to use the worksheet I have linked in the description to plan out your response. Take a pause here to complete this activity, as you will find it really useful. So get started with that and then come back once you have finished. Now that you have planned out your response, it would be a good idea to practice writing this out under time conditions, giving yourself a total of 10 minutes. I have linked in the description a practice question sheet for you to use here. So remember to use your plan to help you, aim for 2 paragraphs but aspire for 3. Keep checking that you are always answering the question, and that's really, really important because it's so easy to go off track. So make sure, always ask yourself for each paragraph, have I actually answered the question? And be specific and detailed in your evidence from the LEGO movie. Pause the video and then come back once you've done that. So hopefully you found that useful. I have included a link to the full exemplar response which earned 10 marks, which I would recommend you read over and compare with your own answer. So consider, is there anything that you missed? What could you do to improve it next time you were to write this? And just have a little comparison in terms of, is yours as good as the 10 marker response? So that's question 8 in a nutshell. Obviously there is a wide variety of combinations that you could be asked, so we cannot tackle every question. However, if you have revised the factual information in the previous videos and you use the structure recommended in this video, you should be able to complete question 8 with ease. Next time we'll be moving on to the promotional campaign, focusing on the LEGO movie posters, so I will see you then.